What's going on, Tamers? It's me, guy who wants to go see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse again. Holy crap, that's a good movie. Probably wondering why I'm talking about this now when the movie came out a while back. Well, actually, Japan gets its movies way later than the rest of the world, so just let me have this one, okay? Also, was there just no spoilers about this movie at all on Twitter? Because I had to do muting gymnastics not to get spoiled for this thing, because you guys went crazy. But enough about Spider-Man. We are here because it is the 16th week of the BT13 set out here in Japan. I think this is the longest running set of all time at this point, right? Am I mistaken when I say that? Cool thing is that we also passed the 1,000 events recorded milestone as well, so woo for that, I suppose. I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that things are pretty much settled for BT13. We've kind of gone through our roller coaster of up and downs with things like restricted list updates, as well as the new promo cards and the trading cards come out. So at this point, I'm pretty sure that we can say that we know what the best decks are. Looking at this week's results, I don't think there's anything that's going to make you say, wow, or holy crap, I'm super shocked to see this. I think at this point, the old Royal Knights are pretty much settled. So that being said, let's take a look at some tournament results, a couple of key takeaways, as well as a close look at some of the decks that topped last week. So taking a peek at the results here, I think that the triumvirate of strongest decks is pretty evident here. Shine Greymon, Mirage Galgamon, and War Greymon in no particular order, honestly. I think that these decks all kind of vie for top spots in BT13. I will say one thing that's pretty interesting about the Mirage Galgamon decks that are starting to top out now is that most of them are not running the Petrov Tamer. So the Nikolov Petrov, which gives you Digimon jamming, have all pretty much been cut for most of the list that I've seen. As we cross the champion line in the sand here between the best and the rest, we're going to see the Beelzemon deck at 2 to 3 wins for the week. And this is because this week's event, the cutoff was right before the restricted list went into effect. So I think that this week's results is the 9th through the 15th, and the restricted list goes into effect on the 16th, which was that Friday. That being said, some of the decks that were running Beelzemon were actually running updated versions, so it'll be interesting to take a look at that a little bit later. Some other notable decks here, things like Gallantmon, again topping well. I know folks have been really down bad on Hybrid in the comments the past couple weeks, so guys, this is for you. Red Hybrid took some wins last week. I told you it was coming, just be patient, right? Of course, Venusmon is there, as well as Belphemon. And rounding out rookies here, we saw this last week, but there was a Sakuyamon control deck that was kind of running around, and it's actually starting to pick up a little bit of steam here. So we'll definitely take a look at this one a little bit later as well. And then some other decks with notable mentions here, things like Beelstar, Bloom Quartz, as well as Blue Flare. Chaosdramon, Examon, a deck I haven't seen in a long time. Actually, I went to locals last week and actually played against a guy running Examon. I was kind of surprised. Things like Hunters, Jessmon. I lost against Jessmon, bro. Gambamon I hear catching strays from these sister mons. But also Duffmon, or Leopardmon, as you folks in the English version of the game know it, as well as Ragnalord. And then rounding things out with Royal Knights, some Crossheart, a little bit of Yellow Hybrid in the mix, as well as Ulforce, and a really cool Agumon deck, but it kind of combines the Shine Greymon cards to do so. I definitely want to take a look at this deck too, because some of the new Agumon support cards that are coming out in BT14 have people thinking that maybe Agumon makes a nice little comeback, and this is just one interesting quick take before that happens. The first list we're going to take a closer look at is going to be the Sakuyamon control deck that's popped up here and there. And with EX4 dropping in the West pretty soon, this might be an interesting pick if you're a big Sakuyamon fan. But as far as game plan is concerned, it is a control-focused deck. Renamon and Searchers here for the low end, as well as the ability to freeze Digimon on board with the newer EX4 Renamon. We've got the level 3 Harrismon security card here, which basically gives one of your opponent's Digimon minus security attack 1. For the turn. Lots of ways to recover, things like the BT8 Anjumon. These are promos, by the way, that's why they look like this, as well as the 2 copies of the Shakomon. Notice that the deck doesn't actually run any copies of the Rika Tamer at all. In fact, it's running 3 copies of the TK Tamer. This, I guess, is just for maximum searchability in your security, and as well as the fact that it doesn't actually use that many plugins. So we only see the one invalidation plugin P here, which gives one of your opponent's Digimon, I believe, minus 6k. And a lot of the destruction in this deck is actually focused on DP minus. We see, again, the invalidation plugin here. We see 3 copies of Megalospark, minus 8k for 5 cost. We also got 3 copies of Odin's Breath. This is the one that your opponent has to interact with, even if it's discarded by an effect off security. The effect still activates. And then there's lots of buffs for these cards as well. Things like the Domon, which gives an opponent's Digimon minus 2,000 inheritance, and then it can force a Digimon at 6k or lower back to hand if you Digivolve into it. I do think that the full power version of this deck does, of course, run the physical training cards here, but because these cards won't be out until I think BT14 over there in the West, it might be okay to slot in some of the yellow memory boosts instead. And then one last thing to note here, I think I called this Sakuyamon before, but this is actually Kazuhamon, but it counts as a Sakuyamon for all intents and purposes. But yeah, once you get to her, you're also going to get access to use one of those really fancy option cards here. These 5 costs are really nice. 5 costs or lower, any of them for free. And because they do so much DP minus, you can pretty much wipe out anything on your opponent's side of the board. And if your opponent tries to get wise, or they're running Crossheart or Hunters, then you've always got the good old Death Exmon just chilling in the back just in case. The next list we're going to dive into is going to be the Digimon deck that I talked about before. However, this one does take into account the updated restricted list of only one copy of, I believe this is the EX2 Impmon. The list is pretty much what you'd expect. However, instead of the other 3 copies of the Impmon, they're actually going to run 3 copies of the, I think it's a promo Pico Devimon. It's been a long time since I've seen this guy. I think he came out way earlier in the game, so it might be a little tough to get your hands on this guy if you don't have him already. So make sure you grab him before the price goes up. Keep in mind, this deck is running 4 copies of the training cards here. However, you could swap these out for the memory boost, no problem. I don't think that's a problem. Or you could swap them out for the miss memory boost that we see right here. Again, this card is the name of the game, and this card does it, so why not? I think for most folks, the bottom end of this deck is pretty set. The Wizardmons, the Impmons, the X-Antibodies as well. However, the top here's going to be 4 copies of the Ballmon, 4 of the EX2 Beelzemon. This is the guy, kind of like the hardest card to get in the deck, I think, right now. And then 2 copies of Beelzemon from the actual starter deck, 2 copies of the X-Antibody, and then 2 copies of the Blast Mode. Yeah, honestly, not a lot to say here with this deck. I think the list is already pretty tight. Most folks have kind of figured it out over here in Japan, and so just making the swap on the level 3s, I think, is what's really important to take from this. And the last list we're going to take a look at today is going to be the Agumon deck that I talked about before that uses some of the Shine tools in it. Now, I say Shine tools, but there's also a couple of other things in here. For example, this Greymon, the black Greymon that came in the new starter deck with the Ace cards here. He's going to either play a tie or an Agumon from your trash or hand for free on the board whenever he's checked in security, so that's pretty nice, as well as all these other like tamers here, which you can basically check in security. So outside of the normal tie tamers, you see that the deck also runs 4 copies of Marcus. And you're probably wondering, what is Marcus doing in this deck? Well, if you take a little closer look, you'll see that the deck's level 4s are all Yugioh Greymons, which means you want to get this Marcus out very cheaply, either playing him from your security or playing him from your hand, depending on the Yugioh Greymon you play. And then later on in the game, you can use the Agumon from BT13 to make Marcus a Digimon and then attack with him into security. So I'm kind of surprised this deck doesn't actually run the BT6 version of Agumon, and that's probably because this deck wants to win like the death by 1,000 cuts rather than just one big cut from the Agumon up here. For folks who don't remember, the Agumon from BT6 gives your level 7 Agumon security attack +1, which means he can check for more security. However, in this case, it seems like they opted to go the Tamer-centric route with some of the EX1 Agumon instead. Looking at the right side here, we see more Tamer-centric focus with the Rise Greymons and the Rise Greymon X Antibody. And then for the options, just some useful options for this deck. 1 copy of the Tactical Retreat. There's a really cool little synergy between this card and the Security Greymon here, where you digivolve into this Greymon, and then you can play the Tactical Retreat, put him on top of your security stack, and then whenever the security is checked, you're going to be able to get an Agumon or a tie tamer off of it. And then finally, the 2 little cards hiding in the background here are going to be 2 copies of Heaven's Judgment. Because this deck is like red-yellow focus, it's going to be nice to get like that minus 18k on the board somewhere, in case something really big comes out on your opponent's side. Not to mention if you just have the black Greymon here, which means you got 3 colors instead, which means this card's doing crazy numbers. What I really like about this deck is that it shows off the versatility of the Shine package. Now, we've seen like the regular Shine Greymon decks, which are very powerful. We've also seen like hybrid versions of that, where they use like the hybrid cards for yellow hybrid, and then they use the Marcus Tamers with the BT13 Agumon here to get multiple attacks off. And in this case, they're actually going to use that package for the Agumon, which I think is really unexplored territory for us, so really cool to see. And that's going to bring the 16th week of the BT13 versus Royal Knight set to a close over here in Japan. Next week, we're going to have decks with the actual restricted list in effect, which will be nice to see. I'm really interested to see what people are cooking up. Also, I've got confirmation from the streets that there's a really wild Minerva/Mervamon deck out there running around, and I'm really excited to take a closer look at that once we have a chance. Also, just a heads up, I'm going to be in Korea next week, so I will probably be a little bit late uploading next week's video. Just a heads up to you folks out there who are kind of expect this to be on a schedule, even though this one was a little bit late too, but don't crucify me for it, sorry, my bad. And then the week after that, Blast Ace, the BT14 set is going to release here in Japan. That'll be really cool. I think at some point, since I've recorded all of the up and downs of this set, I want to take a look at like decks throughout the set. I've got a spreadsheet behind the scenes that just has all the decks at top deck from all the events for this set. I think that'll be a really cool thing to look at as a retrospective, you know, all the entire BT13 set, considering the set was so long. We got so much information. Anyways, folks, I'm going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Is he ever going to address the fact that at the start of the video he had natural sunlight and now he's got the lights on? Is he ever just going to say anything about that? No, don't think I will.